The stars had never felt so cold to Commander Marcus Vane as they did when his ship entered Silurian space. He stood at the viewport of the human dreadnought Defiance, watching the alien homeworld grow larger against the black canvas of space. The planet glowed with soft violet light, covered in crystal cities that had stood for 10,000 years before humans learned to make fire. Marcus was not a man who scared easily. He had held the Crimson Line against the Varak swarm, with 3 damaged frigates and 200 souls. He had watched friends die in the vacuum and kept fighting. But something about this place made his skin crawl. Perhaps it was the weight of history. Perhaps it was the knowledge that every species who came here as supplicants had stayed that way forever. Humanity had earned its seat among the stars through blood and fire. 50 years ago, they had burst from Earth with hungry eyes and restless hearts. They had fought the Varaks when every other species said it was impossible. They had colonized worlds that elder races called death traps. And finally, grudgingly, the Galactic Concordance had offered them a place at the table. But the seat came with chains. The Kethvala Accord bound humanity to 1,000 rules. Humans could not hold true power. Humans could not breed with alien species. And humans could never, under any circumstance, form bonds with the ruling bloodlines of the Concordance. Marcus had read the Accord many times. He understood what it really meant. The elder species feared humanity. They called humans mortals, like it was a disease. Human lives were short, human passions were hot, and human ambition was endless. The aliens had lived for thousands of years in careful balance. Humanity threatened to tip everything over. The diplomatic summit was supposed to be routine. 3 days of boring speeches, carefully worded agreements, and fake smiles. Marcus hated every moment of it. He was a soldier, not a politician. He belonged on his ship, not in some crystal palace pretending to enjoy alien wine that tasted like copper and flowers. On the second night, he escaped to the gardens. The Silurian gardens were famous across the galaxy. Plants from 100 worlds grew in perfect harmony, their leaves silver and gold in colors that human eyes could barely process. 3 moons hung in the purple sky, casting everything in soft, dreamlike light. Marcus walked alone among the alien flowers, finally able to breathe. His security detail waited at the entrance. He had ordered them to give him space. For just a few minutes, he wanted to forget the weight on his shoulders. He did not hear her approach. One moment he was alone, and the next she was there, standing in the moonlight like she had been woven from it. She was Silurian, that much was obvious. Tall and slender, with skin like pale marble and eyes the color of deep space. Her hair fell past her waist in waves of silver white. She wore a gown that seemed to float around her, catching the moonlight and throwing it back in scattered rainbows. She was the most beautiful thing Marcus had ever seen. And that beauty felt dangerous. "Commander Vane," she said. Her voice was soft, musical, but there was something sharp beneath it. "I was hoping to find you alone." Marcus felt his hand move toward his sidearm before he stopped it. "You have me at a disadvantage. You know my name, but I don't know yours." She smiled, and that smile held secrets old enough to crush mountains. "I am Alindra Valsaloris, third heir to the eternal throne, a princess." Marcus felt cold spread through his chest. Speaking with her alone was already a violation of protocol. If anyone saw them, if anyone reported this, his career would end, possibly his life. "Your Highness," he said carefully, "I should return to the summit. It would not be appropriate for us to speak without witnesses." "No," she agreed, stepping closer. "It would not be appropriate at all. That is precisely why I arranged this meeting." She was close enough now that he could smell her perfume. It reminded him of rain on alien flowers, of storms over crystal seas. His heart was beating too fast. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. I have been watching your species for 60 years, Alindra said, since before you knew we existed. I have studied your wars, your art, your poetry. I have read every battle report from the Crimson Line. I know what you did there, Commander. 3 frigates against a swarm that should have devoured them. You won through sheer human stubbornness. Many good people died, Marcus said. I don't consider it a victory. That, she said softly, is why I chose you. Chose him. The words sent ice down his spine. Chose me for what? Alindra looked up at the 3 moons. For a moment, her perfect composure cracked, and Marcus saw something underneath. Something that looked almost like desperation. My people are dying, Commander. Not in body, but in spirit. We have lived so long that we have forgotten why living matters. We maintain the concordance not because it is right, but because change terrifies us. And in our terror, we have built chains for every young species that rises. Chains to keep them from growing. Chains to keep them from threatening our comfortable decay. She turned back to him, and her violet eyes burned with an intensity that stole his breath. Humanity is different. You burn so bright. You fight so hard. You love so deeply. And the concordance is terrified of what you might become if they let you grow free. Marcus shook his head. The Accord gives us peace, protection, a place among the stars. The Accord gives you a cage, Alindra said. A comfortable cage, lined with silk, but a cage nonetheless. And soon, Commander, that cage will become a slaughterhouse. Before he could respond, she stepped forward and took his hand. Her touch was cool, electric, sending shivers through his entire body. Wet me, she whispered. Help me burn this rotting Accord to ash. Help me save your people and mine before it is too late. Marcus pulled his hand away. His mind was spinning, but his soldier's instincts held firm. This was madness. This was treason. This was exactly the kind of trap that destroyed men and empires alike. I cannot, he said. Humanity is finally safe. I will not gamble their future on an alien princess's rebellion, no matter how beautiful she is. Alindra did not look surprised. She did not look disappointed. Instead, she smiled that ancient, knowing smile, and it chilled Marcus more than any threat. You will change your mind, she said. When you see what they are planning to do to your people, you will seek me out, and I will be waiting. She turned and walked away, vanishing into the silver garden like a ghost returning to the shadows. Marcus stood alone under the 3 moons, his heart pounding, her words echoing in his mind. He told himself he would forget her. He told himself this was nothing. He told himself that duty and honor would guide him true. But deep in his chest, something had awakened. Something that would not sleep again. 3 months passed, but Marcus could not forget the princess in the garden. He returned to his patrol routes along the contested reaches, fighting pirates and protecting colonies, doing the work of a soldier. But at night, when sleep would not come, he saw violet eyes in the darkness. He told himself it was foolishness. She was an alien princess playing games he could not understand. Her words about cages and slaughterhouses were just manipulation. Humanity was safe. The Accord protected them. Then the distress call came. The Defiance was patrolling near the border of human space when their sensors detected a Silurian diplomatic vessel. It was damaged, bleeding atmosphere, tumbling through the void like a wounded bird. Human ships were not supposed to approach Silurian vessels without permission. But the Accord had rules about distress calls that even politics could not ignore. Marcus ordered his ship to intercept. They found the vessel torn by weapons fire. Silurian weapons. Someone had attacked their own people. Marcus led the boarding party himself, moving through corridors filled with smoke and floating bodies. Most of the crew was dead. The few survivors were too wounded to speak. He found her in the cargo bay. Alindra sat against the wall, silver blood staining her white gown, clutching 3 data cores to her chest like they were more precious than her own life. When she saw Marcus, she tried to smile, but pain twisted it into a grimace. "Commander Vane," she whispered. "I told you that you would seek me out. What happened here?" Marcus knelt beside her, checking her wounds. They were serious, but not fatal. Silurians were hard to kill. My brother happened. Alindra coughed, and more silver blood spilled from her lips. Crown Prince Valeth discovered my sympathies toward humanity. He decided it would be simpler to remove me quietly than to deal with the scandal. Marcus looked at the bodies floating in the corridor. "This is not quiet." "No," she agreed. "I had more allies than he expected. They died to give me time to escape." Her grip tightened on the data cores. But their sacrifice was not wasted. "These contain the truth, Commander. The real purpose of the Kalevala Accord. The real reason the Concordance fears your kind." They brought her aboard the Defiance. The ship's doctor treated her wounds while Marcus secured the data cores. He told himself he should hand them over to Earth's High Command immediately. He told himself this was not his decision to make, but Alindra's eyes haunted him, and the desperation in her voice had been real. He decrypted the cores in his private quarters. What he found made him sick. The documents were thousands of years old, written in languages that his translator could barely handle. But the meaning was clear. Humanity was not being protected by the Accord. They were being prepared, cultivated, grown like cattle for the slaughter. The elder species of the Concordance had lived too long. Their populations were declining. Their creativity had died. They could no longer adapt, no longer evolve, no longer create anything new. But humans could. Humans bred fast and thought faster. Human neural patterns were complex and adaptable. Human genetic material was rich with possibility. The Accord was a farming program. Keep the humans contained. Let them grow. Let them multiply. And when the time was right, harvest them. Their genes would be stripped and implanted into dying bloodlines. Their minds would be copied and distributed among alien dynasties. Their very souls would be split apart and consumed. The Silurian Emperor was dying. When Crown Prince Valeth took the throne, the harvesting would begin. Within 10 years, humanity would cease to exist as a free species. Marcus sat in darkness for a long time, staring at the data that had destroyed everything he believed. He had spent his entire life serving the system, following orders, trusting that the Accord kept humanity safe. And all along, they had been nothing but livestock waiting for the butcher. He went to Alindra's medical bay. She was awake, watching the stars through the viewport. In the soft light, with bandages wrapped around her wounds, she looked fragile, almost human. "You read the files," she said. It was not a question. "Yes." Marcus sat beside her bed. "How long have you known?" "Decades. I found the original documents in my father's private archives when I was young. I spent years trying to convince myself they were forgeries. They were not." She turned to face him, and her violet eyes held sorrow deeper than any human could carry. "I am sorry, Marcus. I am sorry that my people are monsters. You tried to stop them. I tried. I failed. And now my brother will hunt me across the galaxy." She reached out and took his hand. "I have nothing left but these data cores and the hope that someone will believe them." Marcus brought the evidence to Earth's High Command. He expected shock, outrage, immediate action. Instead, he found closed doors and cold eyes. Admiral Chun, his oldest ally, refused to meet with him. Admiral Vasquez dismissed the data as Silurian propaganda. And Admiral Torres, the man Marcus had saved at the Battle of Nexus Prime, told him to forget everything he had seen. "The situation is more complicated than you understand," Torres said. "Some of us have been offered positions in the New Order. Important positions. The harvesting will not affect everyone. There are ways to survive, if you are willing to be reasonable. Marcus stared at the man he had once called friend. You knew. You knew what they planned, and you did nothing. Torres's face hardened. I did what was necessary to protect my family. You should consider doing the same. That night, the assassins came. They boarded the Defiance through a maintenance airlock, moving through the ship like ghosts. They killed 6 crew members before Marcus even knew they were there. But human soldiers fought differently than Silurian assassins expected. They did not freeze. They did not surrender. They fought with the desperate fury of people who had nothing left to lose. Marcus killed 3 assassins with his bare hands. His security chief killed 2 more. And when they finally secured the ship, they found Alindra standing over the last assassin's body, a stolen blade in her hand and silver blood on her face. My brother will send more, she said. He will never stop. As if to prove her point, the cum system crackled to life. Admiral Torres's voice filled the bridge. Commander Vane, you are hereby relieved of duty. You are charged with treason against the human species. All ships in the sector are ordered to engage and destroy the Defiance. Do not resist. Your death will be recorded as a training accident. Marcus looked at his crew. 87 souls who had trusted him with their lives. 87 humans who now had targets on their backs because they had learned the truth. What do we do, sir? His first officer asked. Marcus turned to Alindra. 3 months ago, she had asked him to help her burn the Accord. He had refused. He had believed in the system. Now the system had tried to kill him. Now he knew the truth. And now there was no going back. You said you wanted to destroy the Accord, he said. Tell me where we start. Alindra's smile was sad and fierce and beautiful all at once. First, she said, we run. Then we find allies. And then, my dear commander, we go to war. The Defiance turned away from Earth and jumped into the darkness between stars. Behind them, the entire human fleet scrambled to give chase. Ahead of them lay the unknown. But for the first time in months, Marcus felt something strange in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it. Hope. The periphery was the galaxy's garbage dump. Every species that refused to kneel to the Concordance eventually ended up here, hiding in the spaces between stars, building lives from scraps and stubbornness. It was dangerous, lawless, and absolutely perfect for building a rebellion. Marcus guided the Defiance through fields of debris and abandoned stations, following coordinates that Alindra pulled from her memory. She knew the periphery better than any princess should. When he asked why, she told him she had spent decades secretly funding resistance movements, smuggling supplies to persecuted colonies, preparing for a day she had hoped would never come. Their first ally found them in the wreckage of an ancient battle. The Kreth were warriors, 7 feet tall, covered in natural armor, with 4 arms and teeth made for tearing flesh. Once they had been young like humanity. Once the Concordance had tried to harvest them. They had fought back with such savage fury that the elder species had decided they were not worth the trouble. Now they lived in exile, nursing their hatred across generations. General Thrak of the Kreth listened to Marcus's story without expression. His black eyes moved between the human commander and the Silurian princess, weighing them, judging them. You ask us to fight beside our ancient enemies, Thrak said. His voice rumbled like grinding stone. You ask us to trust a daughter of the Empire that tried to consume us. I ask you to fight for freedom, Marcus replied. Yours and ours. The Concordance has not forgotten you. When they finish with humanity, they will come for you again. Better to stand together now than fall separately later. Thrak laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. You humans, so young, so bold. You truly believe you can defeat the entire Concordance No, Marcus admitted. But I believe we can make them afraid. And afraid enemies make mistakes. The Kreth general studied him for a long moment. Then he extended one massive hand. My people have waited 200 years for revenge. If you can give us that, we will follow you into the fire. Word spread through the periphery like wildfire. The mortal commander, they called him. A human who had defied the concordance and lived. A human who had stolen a princess and declared war on the galaxy. Allies came slowly at first. Human separatist colonies that had never accepted the accord. Silurian reformists who had followed Alindra in secret for decades. Scientists and artists and soldiers from a dozen species, all united by one simple truth. The concordance was rotten, and someone needed to tear it down. Marcus trained them personally. He taught human tactics to alien warriors. He showed them how to fight without hope, how to win against impossible odds, how to turn weakness into strength. The elder species fought with precision and planning. Humans fought with chaos and fury. It was time the galaxy learned to fear both. Between battles, between planning sessions, between moments of desperation, Marcus found himself drawn to Alindra. She was unlike anyone he had ever known. Ancient and young at the same time. Wise beyond measure, but still capable of wonder. She would spend hours asking him about human poetry, human music, human love. She wanted to understand what made his species burn so bright. My people see passion as a flaw, she told him one night, as they sat together watching stars drift past the viewport. We teach our children to suppress emotion, to think in centuries rather than moments. We believe this makes us superior. Does it? Marcus asked. Alindra was quiet for a long moment. It makes us empty, she finally said. We live forever, but we stopped truly living thousands of years ago. We go through the motions, following traditions we no longer understand, pursuing goals that no longer matter. We are ghosts pretending to be gods. She turned to look at him, and her violet eyes held something he had never seen before. Vulnerability, need, fear. You are the opposite, she whispered. You burn so hot because you know the fire cannot last. Every moment matters because every moment could be your last. I have lived for 300 years, Marcus, and I never truly felt alive until I met you. He kissed her then. It was sudden and desperate and absolutely forbidden. She tasted like starlight and danger and everything he should not want. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were trembling. This is treason, he said. Against the accord, against everything I was taught to believe. The accord is already broken, she replied. We are simply admitting what was always true. Their relationship deepened in stolen moments between crises. She taught him about Silurian history, about the beauty and tragedy of her people. He taught her about human love, about the fierce intensity of a species that knew its time was short. They fought side by side, planned together, bled together. And somewhere along the way, they stopped being allies and became something more. But war does not wait for love. The liberation of Thesan 7 was their first major battle. Thesan 7 was a human colony marked for processing. 20,000 souls scheduled for harvesting. The Concordance had sent a fleet of 50 ships to collect them. Marcus had 12. Every tactical analysis said he would lose. Every simulation ended in defeat. But Marcus had learned something about human warfare that the elder species never understood. Sometimes victory came not from superior numbers, but from sheer refusal to accept defeat. He split his fleet into 3 groups, each one attacking from a different angle. He used the planet's moon as cover, launching ambush that struck and vanished before the enemy could respond. He sent empty ships loaded with explosives on suicide runs, targeting command vessels and spreading chaos through the enemy formation. The Concordance fleet was larger, better armed, more experienced. but they had forgotten how to improvise. They followed their battle plans, even as those plans fell apart around them. And when Marcus's reinforcements arrived, hidden in the planet's shadow, the enemy finally broke. 37 Concordant ships destroyed. 20,000 humans freed. The galaxy watched in shock as a handful of rebels defeated the mightiest military force in existence. In the aftermath, standing in the ruins of a processing facility that would never harvest another soul, Marcus found Alendra waiting for him. She was covered in dirt and blood and smoke. She had fought beside him through every moment of the battle, refusing to stay behind, refusing to let him face death alone. Now she looked at him with eyes that held the weight of centuries and the hope of seconds. "My people have a ceremony," she said loudly, so the thousands of freed colonists and rebel soldiers could hear. When two souls choose each other across impossible distances. When love is strong enough to break chains and rewrite history. She took his hands in hers. Her grip was strong and steady, despite everything they had just survived. "Will you wed me, Marcus Vane?" she asked. "Will you stand beside me not as an ally, but as a partner? Will you help me shatter what should never have been built?" The crowd fell silent. Kreth warriors stood beside human soldiers. Silurian reformists watched alongside alien exiles. Every species that had ever been oppressed by the Concordance held its breath. Waiting. Marcus looked at the woman who had turned his life upside down. She had shown him the truth. She had given him purpose. She had taught him that some things were worth burning everything for. "Yes," he said, "I will wed you. I will stand beside you. And together we will tear down every wall that divides our peoples." The cheer that rose from the crowd shook the ruined buildings. Humans embraced Kreth. Silurians wept with joy. And in the center of it all, a mortal commander kissed his immortal princess while the galaxy trembled at what they had begun. War was coming. The Concordance would not forgive this insult. Blood and fire waited ahead. But for this one moment, standing in the ashes of victory, surrounded by hope made flesh, Marcus allowed himself to believe that they might actually win. The Silurian throne world hung in space like a jewel carved from light. Crystal spires reached toward the stars. Floating gardens drifted between buildings older than human civilization. It was the most beautiful planet Marcus had ever seen, and he had come to tear it apart. There was no time for a fleet battle, no time for careful planning. Every hour that passed brought Earth closer to death. Marcus left his ships in orbit, drawing the enemy's attention, while he led a strike team through gaps in the planetary defense that only Alendra knew existed. 20 soldiers, 12 humans, 5 Kreth, 3 Silurian reformists, and Alendra herself, guiding them through maintenance tunnels she had explored as a child. "I never thought I would return here," she whispered as they moved through darkness. Her hands traced walls that held memories of a happier time. "I never thought I would bring war to my home." Marcus squeezed her hand. "We did not start this war. We are ending it." They emerged in the lower levels of the Imperial Palace. Everything was gold and silver and light, designed to overwhelm visitors with the power and beauty of the Empire. But Marcus saw past the glamour. He saw the rot beneath the surface. He saw corridors built on lies and chambers decorated with stolen lives. The guards found them near the central tower. Silurian soldiers in armor that hummed with ancient technology, weapons that could cut through steel like paper. They fought in perfect formation, centuries of training guiding every movement. But Marcus's team did not fight like Silurians. They fought like humans, messy, unpredictable, willing to take wounds that should have been fatal. The Kreth tore through enemy lines with savage joy. The Silurian reformists knew exactly where to strike to disable their former comrades. They lost 3 soldiers in the first engagement, 5 more in the second. By the time they reached the throne room doors, only 10 remained. Marcus kicked through barriers that had stood for millennia. The doors shattered inward, revealing a chamber vast enough to hold 1,000 people. But only 3 figures waited inside. Crown Prince Valith stood before the eternal throne, his hand resting on a control panel covered in symbols older than history. Behind him, slumped in the throne itself, the Emperor of the Silurian Empire clung to life by the thinnest thread. And between them, projected in light and shadow, Earth rotated slowly, helplessly, waiting for death. "Welcome home, sister," Valith said. His voice was calm, almost amused. "I see you brought your pet mortal." "Release Earth," Alindra demanded. "Call off the weapon. This madness has gone far enough." Valith laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Madness? I am saving our species. Humans are a disease, spreading across the galaxy, infecting everything they touch. Father was too weak to act. I will not make the same mistake." He touched the control panel, and the image of Earth pulsed with ominous light. "The weapon is nearly charged. In minutes, your precious Earth will be nothing but ash. 17 billion mortals, gone in an instant. And with them, the rebellion dies." Marcus stepped forward, his weapon raised. "If you destroy Earth, you will not live long enough to celebrate." "Perhaps," Valith shrugged, "but I have lived 1,000 years. I have seen everything this galaxy has to offer. Death holds no fear for me. Can you say the same, mortal? Can you accept that your short, meaningless life was all for nothing?" It was a question Marcus had asked himself many times. In the dark hours, when doubt crept in, when the weight of responsibility threatened to crush him, what was the point of fighting when everyone he loved would die anyway? What was the meaning of hope when extinction waited around every corner? But standing in that throne room, facing a creature who had lived for centuries and learned nothing, Marcus finally understood the answer. "You call my life meaningless because it is short," he said. "But you have it exactly wrong. Every moment of my life has meaning because it is limited. Every breath counts because there are only so many. Every love is precious because time will take it away." He lowered his weapon. "Not in surrender, but in certainty. You have lived 1,000 years, Valith. And what have you done with them? You built nothing. You created nothing. You loved nothing. You are so afraid of death that you have forgotten how to live. And in the end, that makes your eternal life worth less than my mortal one." Valith's calm cracked. Rage twisted his beautiful features into something ugly. "Silence, mortal. You understand nothing. I understand everything." Marcus stepped forward again. "I understand that you are dying. Not in body, but in spirit. Your entire species is dying the same way. That is why you wanted to harvest us. Not because you hated our passion, but because you envied it." From the throne, a weak voice spoke. "He is right." Everyone turned. The Emperor, ancient beyond measure, withered to nothing but bones and will, had opened his eyes. They were the same violet as Alindra's, but dimmed by millennia of existence. "Father," Valith snarled, "you are too weak to speak. Let me handle this. I have been weak for too long." The Emperor's hand trembled as he raised it. "I signed the Kethavala Accord. I approved the harvesting program. I watched humanity rise and felt only fear." His eyes found Alindra. "I watched my daughter learn to love what I had been taught to hate. And I was too much of a coward to support her." With visible effort, the Emperor pressed a symbol on his throne. The weapon's charge began to dissipate. Earth's image flickered and stabilized as the death sentence was lifted. "No." Valith lunged forward, but Marcus was faster. Human reflexes, honed by a lifetime of combat, carried him across the room in an instant. He tackled the Crown Prince, and they tumbled together across the ancient floor. They fought like animals. Valith was stronger, faster, with 1,000 years of training behind every blow. But Marcus had something the prince would never understand. He had something worth dying for. In the end, it was Alindra who ended it. While Marcus held her brother down, she pressed a blade to Velas' throat. Her hand was steady. Her eyes held no mercy. "I gave you chances," she said softly. "Again and again, I tried to reason with you. I tried to show you what humanity could teach us. But you would not listen. Traitor," Velas spat. "You have betrayed your blood for these creatures." "No." Alindra shook her head. "I have finally found something worth living for." The blade moved, and Crown Prince Velith, heir to the eternal throne, died on the floor of the palace he had expected to rule forever. In the silence that followed, the Emperor spoke once more. His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried through the vast chamber. "The accord is broken," he said. "Let it stay broken. Perhaps it is time for the galaxy to remember how to grow." He smiled then, looking at his daughter and her mortal husband. And in that smile, Marcus saw something unexpected. Relief, gratitude, hope. "Perhaps we were the ones who forgot how to evolve," the Emperor whispered. And then his eyes closed, and he breathed no more. The news spread across the galaxy like light escaping a newborn star. The Concordance had fallen. The Accord was dead. And humanity, the mortals who burned so bright and died so fast, had rewritten the future. 10 years later, Marcus stood in the gardens where he had first met Alindra. Gray touched his temples now. Lines creased the corners of his eyes. His body reminded him daily that human time was running out. Beside him, Alindra had barely aged at all. She would live for centuries more, watching the galaxy she had helped to save. Once, this thought had terrified her. Now she understood that this was precisely what made every moment precious. Their daughter played nearby, chasing butterflies that glowed with inner light. She was 8 years old, with her mother's violet eyes and her father's stubborn jaw. The galaxy called her an abomination, the impossible child of two species that should never have mingled. Alindra called her hope. "Any regrets?" Marcus asked, taking his wife's hand. She thought about everything they had burned, every life lost, every battle fought, the millions who had died so that billions could live free. "Only that mortal lives are so short," she said, leaning into him. "And there is still so much I want to show you." He smiled then. That impossible human smile that had inspired a rebellion, ended an empire, and taught an ancient galaxy how to live again. Then we had better not waste a moment. Above them, the stars shone bright and eternal. Below them, a new galaxy was being born. And between them, holding hands in a garden where everything had begun, a mortal and an immortal watched their daughter laugh and knew that every sacrifice had been worth it. The inscription on the memorial to the mortal rebellion, raised on the throne world a century later, would capture it perfectly. They called us mortals, thinking it diminished us. They never understood. Mortality is not our weakness. It is the fire that makes us burn so bright, and in the end, that fire set the galaxy free. They married on a dead moon circling a forgotten star, far from any world that would report them to the Concordance. The ceremony blended human and Silurian traditions in ways that neither species had ever imagined. Marcus wore the formal black of a human naval commander. Alindra wore white silk that seemed to glow with its own inner light. General Thrax served as witness, his massive form casting shadows over the gathered crowd. The words they spoke were old. Older than the Accord, older than the Concordance, reaching back to a time when love meant more than politics. Marcus promised to stand beside her until death claimed him. Alindra promised to carry his memory through all the centuries that followed. When they kissed, the image was broadcast across 100 worlds. It was not just a wedding. It was a declaration of war against everything the Concordance stood for. The response was, Immediate. Crown Prince Valith summoned the combined fleet. This was the greatest military force in galactic history, a gathering of ships from every elder species, a weapon that had not been assembled in 3,000 years, 1 million vessels, 10 billion soldiers, enough firepower to sterilize planets and darken suns. Against this, the rebellion had 300 ships and 40 million fighters. The numbers should have been laughable. They were not. "We cannot win in direct combat," Marcus told his war council. They had gathered in the war room of their flagship, the Defiance, surrounded by holographic maps of the galaxy. "So we do not fight directly. We strike and fade. We target supply lines. We make them chase shadows while we free more worlds." For 6 months, the strategy worked. The rebellion grew with every victory. Each freed colony brought more ships, more soldiers, more hope. Marcus became a legend, a name whispered in fear by concordance officers and spoken in reverence by the oppressed. But Valith was patient. He had lived for 1,000 years and could wait a few more months. Slowly, carefully, he began closing the trap. The attack came at the Valan. Nebula. Marcus had brought his fleet there to rescue a convoy of refugee ships. It should have been a simple operation. Instead, he found the combined fleet waiting, spread across the nebula like a wall of steel and death. 20-1 odds. No escape routes. No reinforcements within range. "Surrender the traitor princess." Valith's voice echoed through every communication channel. "Surrender yourself, Commander. Do this, and we will spare your crews. Resist, and everyone dies." Alindra gripped Marcus's hand. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. "We should retreat. Find another way. There will be other battles." "There is no retreat," Marcus replied quietly. "They have blocked every jump point. This is where it ends, one way or another." He looked around the bridge at his crew. Humans and aliens alike, all watching him, all trusting him to find a way out. He had led them through a dozen impossible situations. They believed he could do it again. But this time, Marcus saw no path to victory. Not with weapons. Not with tactics. The only weapon left was the one the Concordance had never understood. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Not to our fleet. To theirs." His communications officer blinked in confusion, but obeyed. Within seconds, Marcus's face appeared on every screen in the combined fleet. 1 billion enemy soldiers watched as the mortal commander began to speak. "You call us mortals," he said. His voice was calm, steady, carrying the weight of everything humanity had endured. "You say it like it is an insult. Like our short lives make us lesser beings. Like the fact that we die means our existence has no value." He paused, letting the words sink in across 1 million ships. "But you have it backwards. Mortality is not our weakness. It is our greatest strength. Because we know that every moment matters. Every choice has weight. Every love, every friendship, every sacrifice counts. Because we cannot waste time assuming there will always be more." Behind him, Alindra watched with tears in her eyes. She had never heard him speak like this. She had never seen the full fire of human spirit blazing so bright. "You have lived for thousands of years," Marcus continued. "You have seen empires rise and fall. But somewhere along the way, you forgot why living matters. You became so afraid of change that you tried to freeze the galaxy in place. You built the Accord not to create peace, but to prevent growth. You planned to harvest us not because you hated us, but because you envied what we have." Across the combined fleet, soldiers stirred uneasily. Many of them had never questioned the Concordance before. Many of them had never heard a human speak with such conviction. "We love fiercely because our time is short. We fight desperately because every victory might be our last. We create beauty and art and meaning because we know that death waits for all of us. And that urgency, that passion, that refusal to accept the inevitable, that is what you truly fear. Not our weapons, not our numbers. You fear that we might remind you what you have lost. Silence hung across the nebula. A million ships waited, weapons primed, orders given. All it would take was one command from Valeth, and the rebellion would end in fire. But the command did not come. Instead, a single Silurian cruiser broke formation. Its captain opened the channel, his voice trembling as he spoke. I served the Empire for 300 years. I followed every order. I believed what they told me. But I cannot fire on these people. Not after hearing that. Another ship followed. Then another. Then a dozen. Then 100. The combined fleet began to fracture. Kreth, warships that had been conscripted into service, remembered their own history and crossed to join the rebellion. Silurian officers who had secretly doubted the concordance finally found the courage to act. Even species humanity had never encountered began sending messages of support, inspired by words that crossed the barriers of language and culture. Valeth screamed orders through the chaos. He demanded loyalty. He threatened execution. He promised rewards beyond imagination to anyone who would destroy the rebels, but his fleet was dissolving around him. And when Marcus gave the order to attack, the tide of battle had already turned. They won. Against every odd, against every calculation, they won. Not through superior firepower, but through something the Concordance had forgotten existed. Inspiration. But Valeth escaped. His personal flagship jumped away as his fleet crumbled, carrying the Crown Prince and his rage into the darkness between stars. And before he vanished, he activated something ancient and terrible. The alert reached Marcus's bridge moments after the battle ended. His tactical officer's face went white as she read the data. "Sir," she whispered, "the Crown Prince has activated a Concordance failsafe. It is an ancient weapon, designed to sterilize problematic species." She swallowed hard. "It is aimed at Earth." Marcus felt the world drop away beneath him. Everything they had fought for, everyone they had saved, meant nothing if Earth burned. 17 billion souls. The birthplace of his species. His home. How long do we have? 72 hours. The weapon requires time to charge. 72 hours. 3 days to cross half the galaxy and stop a weapon that had been built to end civilizations. 3 days to save everything that mattered. Alendra stood beside him, her hand finding his in the darkness. "The weapon is on the throne world," she said. "In the Imperial Palace. The place where I grew up. Can you get us inside?" She met his eyes, and in them he saw the weight of what she was agreeing to. She would have to return home. She would have to face her brother. She would have to watch the only world she had ever known become a battlefield. "Yes," she said. "I can get us inside." Marcus turned to his crew. Exhausted, wounded, still celebrating a victory that now felt hollow. They had done the impossible. Now he was about to ask them to do it again. "We are going to the heart of enemy territory," he said. "We are going to stop a weapon designed by gods. We are going to save Earth or die trying." His first officer stood straighter. "Orders, sir?" "Set course for the throne world," Marcus commanded. "Maximum speed. We have 72 hours to save humanity." The Defiants turned toward the heart of the enemy empire. Behind them, their fleet followed, battered but unbroken. Ahead of them lay the final battle, and somewhere in the darkness, Valeth waited, eager to finish what he had started.